Hello everybody, welcome back to the Country Living Homestead. Today I am going to teach you how to change the oil in a Polaris Ranger 570 side by side. Stay tuned. Okay, so to start off the video, this is what you're going to need to perform this task. I will put links to everything below. So you're going to need some latex gloves, a 3/8 inch drive torque wrench, some oil filter pliers, a funnel, a 6mm hex socket, a ratchet, a pair of safety glasses, because let's face it, nobody wants hot oil in the eyes, a roll of shop towels, and I'm actually using OEM parts. So this is a Polaris 2540086 oil filter, and it calls for 2 quarts of PS4 full synthetic engine oil. Let's get to it. Okay, so step 1, you're going to make sure that you're in a well-ventilated area. So I've actually got both barn doors open here because we're going to start this up, let it run for about 1 to 2 minutes. And what that's going to do is that's going to heat up the oil to allow it to run out easier and smoother, because we want to make sure that we get all the oil out of there. So let's go ahead and start it. And we're just going to let this run for about a minute or two just to heat up that oil. Okay, so it's been running now for a couple of minutes, so that should have the oil heated up pretty well. So we're going to turn it off and make sure that the keys are out, safety first. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the bed so that way I can have easier access to get to the engine. So now for this step, you can see the oil fill cap right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this fill cap. And then I'm going to use some shop towels just to kind of wipe around it. I want to make sure that there's no debris around this, because of course when we're out in the fields riding this, it can get a little dirty. So we just want to make sure that there's no dirt, rocks, anything going down in this motor, because a lot of this motor is aluminum and it would just be bad news to get any type of hard type of debris down into the motor. And we definitely don't want that to happen. So we're just going to take a shop towel, wipe that real nice and clean. And let's move on to the next step. Okay, so for this step, one thing I forgot to mention is you're going to need something to catch the oil. Use these little handy dandy oil pans. Those seem to work out really well. Gives you a lot of coverage to be able to do maintenance down under here. Okay, so one thing that I'm figuring out here before I go any further is that it seems like really close to the ground. So I've got some car ramps here that I'm going to use, that I usually use to do oil changes in our car. And I'm just going to back it up onto these just to give me some more room. And of course, I put the oil cap back on for right now. We'll get that back off here in just a minute. But there's not a lot of space under there to kind of crawl around. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up there right now. Just to be on the safe side, I've gone ahead and put some chunks of wood here on the front tire just to make sure that it's not going to roll off of here. So that should be pretty good. So let's get under there and see where this oil plug is. All right, so now I've got my socket and ratchet ready to go. Okay, and I see the oil plug. So it's actually It's like a little triangle that's back here, right on the bottom of the motor. So the oil plug is located right at the base of that triangle. Okay, so we got that broke loose. Okay, now the fun part. Now, one thing I do when I'm removing these oil drain plugs is I kind of push up on them as I'm loosening them with my finger. So it tends to hold the oil in there until you have time to get your hand out of the way before you get splashed. So let's see how it's going to go. Not bad. I'm going to go ahead and let that drain for a little while. Okay, so the next step is to take off the oil filter. And the oil filter is actually located on the passenger side. You can actually see it, it's right here. So we're going to go ahead and get that taken off. I'm going to use these oil filter pliers to try to grab a hold of it. There's not a lot of room in here, but hopefully I should be able to get enough of it to loosen it up here. There is not a lot of room, that's for sure. Okay, it's moving. See the struggles that Polaris doesn't show on their video of getting into this thing, but it's quite a tight area. Now, I'm sure there's probably different tools that could probably make this a lot easier, but I don't have it, and this is what I've got. So that's what I'm using, and it worked. So now it seems like I should be able to get that off with my hands now, and I'm able to. And we're going to want to make sure that we've got something down here to grab some oil, because it does look like there's some oil coming out of there as well. So we just want to make sure that we capture that. Okay, so we've got that. Go ahead and dispose that oil in there. There we go. The nice thing about these containers is they're pretty large to be able to capture different areas of oil coming out, so that actually worked out pretty nice. So let's let this drain out. We've got the oil filter off, and we've got the oil plug out. So we're going to let this drain a little bit more, and then we're going to start putting everything back together again. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just wipe off this area where the oil filter just came off, just to make sure there's no debris on that either. So we just want to make sure that's all nice and clean back in there. That looks pretty good. And then, of course, just to double check on the top up here, make sure this is all nice and clean. So that's good to go there. So we're looking good. And here I will actually show you where the oil filter is located. So when you come down here, you can see back in there next to the dipstick right there. So right there is where the oil filter gets placed. So we're going to get that put on here in just a minute. And what you want to do is you want to take a little bit of fresh oil and just rub around the outside edge of the filter. There's like a rubber seal. And you want to rub a little bit of oil on there, so make sure that you get a nice tight fit when you put this back together. And I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. Okay, so I just took a little bit of oil out of the new container. Just going to put a nice little coat on this rubber seal right here. Probably get a little bit more. Just want to make sure that it's got a nice even coat around there before we put this back on. Some people actually fill these filters up. I don't. Good, bad, or indifferent, but I just think it would be difficult to put it back on there without spilling oil all over the place. So I just put a little oil around the edge like that. That should be good. We're going to go ahead and get this started back on here. And make sure you don't cross-thread it, because you definitely don't want that to happen. Because again, a lot of these components are aluminum, and it's very easy to mess things up. So I'm just going to put this on hand tight. And then try to go a little bit more. There we go. That should be good. Okay, so let's get the plug put back in, and then we can start filling it back up with oil. Okay, so one thing you want to make sure when you're actually putting this plug back in is that there's a little brass washer that's on the plug. I don't know if you can see that or not, but you want to make sure that that is still intact, that there's no burrs, no breaks, no bends, nothing like that, because that's basically your seal. And sometimes when you pull these plugs out, this bushing or washer, whatever you want to call it, gets stuck to the actual pan of the motor, and you'll just have the plug itself. So you just want to make sure that you do have that. I always like to wipe everything down real good to make sure that there's no debris or anything going in there. And we're just going to go ahead and get this started back in there. And again, making sure that you don't cross-thread these. You want to make sure that that's going in there perfectly. Because again, these are aluminum components, and they can definitely get ruined pretty easily. So that's not too bad to get back up in there. So we're good there. And now is when we're going to use the torque wrench to torque to specifications. I believe the owner's manual says it's 12 foot-pounds. So we're going to tighten this to 12 foot-pounds, no more. You definitely don't want to over-tighten this, because you will strip out the bottom oil pan of your motor, and then you've got some major problems. So torque wrench is a must-have for this project. Okay, so we've got the torque wrench. We're ready to tighten this to specs. I've got it all set up to where it needs to be. So let's go ahead and get this tightened down. There we go, 12 foot-pounds of torque. Okay, so this calls for 2 quarts of oil. Go ahead and get this put in right now. Okay. So we've got 1 quart down. 1 more quart to go. Got to be patient with this. Especially with this funnel, because it's got a small hole in the bottom of it, and the oil takes a little while to go through, but hey, I'm not getting oil all over the engine, which is a good thing, and that is a success. So we're going to let that drain in there. That's looking great. I'm just going to quick hit this with a paper towel so I don't get oil in the engine. Look at that, looking great. So now I'm just going to wipe off that oil fill port one last time with another paper towel, just to make sure that I didn't get anything around that as I was putting the funnel in and pouring in the oil. So we're good there. I'm going to wipe off the cap. Get that all cleaned off, good to go, no debris, everything's looking great. Go ahead and put the cap back on. And now I'm just going to check underneath to make sure that there's no leaks. Okay, everything is looking good under here. I just want to make sure I get all this oil wiped off of the bottom of the machine. Okay, so for the final step, I'm just going to remove my wooden chocks, if you will. Put down the bed. And I'm going to get this off of these ramps and let it run for, another minute or two. Let the oil get moved around in there and double check to make sure we don't have any leaks. Okay, so I've left it running for a couple of minutes and everything is looking good. So we got no oil leaks. Everything is running the way it should. So there you have it, folks. How to do an oil change on a Polaris Ranger 570. I do know that this is actually good for quite a few years because they haven't really changed much. So I believe ours is a 2021. So it should be good, I think, until 2014. So anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We greatly appreciate your support, and we hope you stick around for more videos to come. Thanks for stopping by the homestead.